When tech billionaire Harrison Blake bought his young mistress the brand new iPhone 17 for $1,099, launched just yesterday and already impossible to find, he thought he was showing ultimate power. But when his wife Keandra found the Apple Store receipt in his jacket this morning, her next move would destroy everything he built. Harrison Blake stood in his penthouse office overlooking downtown San Francisco, holding the sleek white Apple bag like it contained the crown jewels. In many ways it did. Inside was the iPhone 17 Pro, the device that had launched just 24 hours ago and was already selling out faster than concert tickets. The $1,099 price tag meant nothing to a man worth $2.3 billion, but the exclusivity? That was everything. "You actually got one on launch day?" Cassandra's voice was breathless with excitement as she rushed toward him, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. At 24, she was everything Harrison thought he deserved after building his tech empire, young, beautiful, and properly impressed by his wealth and connections. Harrison's chest swelled with pride as he watched her unwrap the phone. This was power, real power. While millions of people were refreshing Apple's website hoping to snag one of these devices, he had simply walked into the VIP section of the Apple Store and walked out with whatever he wanted. Only the best for you, sweetheart. While everyone else waits weeks, you get the hottest tech on Earth. Cassandra immediately started recording herself, phone camera capturing her genuine excitement. "Oh my God, you guys! Look what I got. The iPhone 17 Pro on actual launch day. This is literally impossible to get right now." She was already mentally calculating the likes and views this would generate. Her followers would die of jealousy. What Harrison didn't mention, what he conveniently forgot as he basked in Cassandra's adoration, was that he had a wife at home. Keandra Blake, 38 years old and brilliant in ways that Harrison had systematically made himself forget. 12 years ago, when Blake Tech Industries was just a dream and Harrison was scrambling for funding, Keandra had been his secret weapon. Fresh out of Stanford with a degree in AI engineering, she had helped him understand the technical complexities that would make his company revolutionary. But success had a way of rewriting history in Harrison's mind. As Blake Tech grew and the money poured in, Keandra became less of a partner and more of an accessory. She attended his galas, smiled for photos, and played the role of the supportive wife, while Harrison convinced himself that he had built everything alone. The brilliant woman who had helped to architect his early algorithms became invisible to him, reduced to someone who organized his dry cleaning and managed his social calendar. This morning, September 20th, Keandra was doing exactly that, organizing. She moved through their Marin County mansion with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to find purpose in the mundane. Harrison had stumbled in late the night before, claiming he had been at the office working on a crucial deal. The lie came so easily now that Keandra wondered if he even remembered what truth felt like. As she gathered his suit jacket to take to the dry cleaner, something crinkled in the pocket. The Apple Store receipt was folded neatly, as if Harrison had been proud of his purchase. iPhone 17 Pro, 256 gigabytes, space black, $1,099, purchased September 19, 2025, at 6:47 p.m. Keandra stared at the receipt for a long moment, her brilliant mind immediately calculating the implications. Harrison already had the latest iPhone. She had watched him use it just yesterday morning. This wasn't an upgrade for himself. The timestamp told her everything, 6:47 p.m., well after she'd called him asking when he would be home for dinner. He had lied about working late and instead had been buying expensive gifts for someone else. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow, but it was the casual cruelty of it that truly stung. Harrison hadn't just cheated, he had done it with the kind of thoughtless extravagance that showed how little he valued their marriage. He was throwing away 12 years for someone young enough to get excited about having the latest phone on launch day. By noon, Keandra had made her decision. She drove to Blake Tech's headquarters, the building that bore her husband's name but had been built on algorithms she had helped create. The receptionist, a young woman who clearly knew about Harrison's affairs based on her guilty expression, tried to stop her from going up to the executive floor. "Mrs. Blake, Mr. Blake is in meetings all day. Perhaps I could schedule—" "I'll wait," Keandra said simply, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had learned to command respect without raising her voice. She found Harrison in his corner office, feet up on his desk, video chatting with investors in Tokyo. Through the glass walls, she could see several employees pretending not to watch as she entered uninvited. Harrison's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, annoyance, and finally cold dismissal. "Gentlemen, I'll have to call you back," he said to his computer screen, ending the call with practiced smoothness. When he looked at Keandra, his expression was the one he reserved for interruptions. "Keandra, what are you doing here? You know I'm busy." She placed the receipt on his desk without saying a word. Harrison glanced at it and she watched his face carefully, noting the moment he realized what she had found. For just a second, she saw something that might have been guilt, but it was quickly replaced by irritation. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "it's just a phone, Keandra." "Business expense." "Business expense?" Her voice was calm, but everyone in the adjacent offices could hear every word through the glass. "For someone who isn't your wife—" Harrison stood up, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of this conversation. "Look, we can discuss this at home. This isn't the place for domestic drama." But Keandra was just getting started. "Domestic drama? Is that what you call 12 years of marriage? Is that what you call the work I did to help you build this company before you decided I was too inconvenient to remember?" The employees outside weren't even pretending to work anymore. Harrison's face was flushing red, but whether from embarrassment or anger, Keandra couldn't tell. "Keandra, you're making a scene. You need to leave. Now." "I'm making a scene?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Harrison, you bought your mistress a $1,000 phone on launch day and left the receipt in your pocket like a teenager. If anyone's making a scene, it's you." She turned and walked out, leaving Harrison standing behind his desk, his authority undermined in front of his entire executive team. The damage was done, and they both knew it. That evening, Blake Tech was hosting its quarterly tech summit, a lavish affair where Harrison liked to show off for investors and potential partners. Keandra had originally planned to skip it, but now she had a different idea. She arrived fashionably late, wearing a dress that reminded everyone in the room that she had been a stunning woman long before Harrison's money made her one. The irony wasn't lost on her when she saw Cassandra across the room, proudly showing off her new iPhone 17 to a group of impressed executives. The girl was beautiful, Keandra had to admit, but there was something almost tragic about watching her perform gratitude for a man's attention. Harrison was in his element, holding court near the bar, regaling a group of investors with stories about Blake Tech's latest innovations. When he spotted Keandra, his smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Gentlemen, you remember my wife, Keandra?" The men nodded politely, the kind of acknowledgement reserved for wives who are expected to smile and say little. But when the conversation turned to artificial intelligence and machine learning, Keandra found herself unable to stay quiet. "The really interesting development," she said, joining the conversation naturally, "is in neural network optimization. The algorithms we're seeing now are fundamentally different from what we had even 2 years ago." One of the investors, a man named Peterson, looked surprised that she knew technical terminology. "Are you familiar with the field, Mrs. Blake?" Before Keandra could answer, Harrison interrupted with a laugh that felt like a slap. "Honey, let the actual engineers handle the technical talk. Why don't you go check on the catering?" The silence that followed was deafening. Keandra felt every eye in the group on her, some embarrassed, others curious about how she would respond. She smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes, and excused herself gracefully. But as she walked away, she could hear the whispered conversations starting behind her. She caught fragments. "Poor thing. Doesn't even know about the girl. Harrison's trading up to newer models just like his phones." The humiliation was complete, but it was also clarifying. For too long, Keandra had accepted Harrison's version of their story, the one where she was the grateful wife of a brilliant innovator. But standing in that room, dismissed and mocked, she remembered who she really was. She wasn't just Harrison Blake's wife. She was Keandra Williams, Stanford AI engineering graduate, and she had been brilliant long before she had ever met Harrison. That night, while Harrison celebrated his continued success, Keandra sat in her home office and did what she did best. She started investigating. Her Stanford training had taught her to approach problems systematically, and Harrison Blake was just another problem to solve. She began with Blake Tech's patent filings, cross-referencing them with prior art and academic publications. What she found made her stomach turn. Harrison's revolutionary algorithms weren't revolutionary at all. They were stolen, carefully modified versions of work done by smaller companies and independent researchers. The pattern became clear as she dug deeper. A small startup would develop innovative AI technology, struggle to get funding, and then mysteriously go bankrupt after their ideas appeared in Blake Tech's products. Harrison had built his empire not on innovation, but on theft, using his resources to crush the very people whose work he was stealing. The most heartbreaking case was a company called Neurologic, founded by Jerome Washington, a brilliant black computer scientist who had developed groundbreaking machine learning algorithms. His company had been gaining traction when suddenly Blake Tech announced a suspiciously similar product. Neurologic couldn't compete with Harrison's marketing budget and corporate connections. Within 6 months, they were bankrupt. But Keandra's investigation revealed something Harrison didn't know. She hadn't actually given up her career when she married him. Over the years, she had been quietly developing her own AI systems, publishing under a pseudonym, and building a reputation in the tech world that existed entirely separate from her husband's empire. While Harrison saw her as decorative, she had been creating technology that made his stolen algorithms look primitive. Major tech companies had been courting her anonymous work for years, not knowing that the brilliant Dr. K. Williams was actually Mrs. Harrison Blake. The next morning, Keandra began making phone calls. Jerome Washington was surprised to hear from her, but when she explained what she had discovered about his stolen algorithms, his anger was palpable. More importantly, he was interested in justice. "I can help you," Keandra told him. "All of you. Every inventor Harrison destroyed, every company he bankrupted with stolen technology. I have evidence and I have resources." Over the next 48 hours, Keandra worked around the clock, coordinating with lawyers, gathering evidence, and reaching out to Harrison's other victims. But more importantly, she was making strategic investments. Using her substantial trust fund, money that had been hers long before she met Harrison, she began quietly purchasing Blake Tech stock through shell companies. Harrison was so focused on his newest conquest that he never noticed his wife's activities. He spent his days alternating between business meetings and romantic lunches with Cassandra, while Keandra systematically dismantled the foundation of his empire. On September 22nd, just 3 days after the iPhone 17 incident, Blake Tech's board of directors received an urgent request for an emergency meeting. The agenda was vague, but the gravity of the request suggested serious legal issues. Harrison arrived at the boardroom confident and relaxed, assuming this was about some minor patent dispute that his lawyers could handle. He was chatting casually with board members when the conference room door opened and Keandra walked in, followed by several people he didn't recognize. "Keandra?" Harrison's voice was sharp with confusion and anger. "What are you doing here?" "This is a board meeting." "Yes, it is," she replied calmly, taking a seat at the table. "And as the majority shareholder of Blake Tech Industries, I have every right to be here." The silence in the room was absolute. Harrison stared at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. "What are you talking about?" "You don't own shares in my company." Keandra smiled, and for the first time in days, it reached her eyes. "Actually, I do. 51% to be exact. Purchased through various investment vehicles over the past 3 days." She slid a folder across the table to him. "It's all perfectly legal and documented." Harrison's face went white as he opened the folder and saw the stock certificates and legal documents. "This is impossible. You don't have this kind of money." My trust fund is considerably larger than you realized, Harrison. You never bothered to ask about my family's wealth when you were busy taking credit for my algorithms. The board members were exchanging confused glances, clearly trying to understand what was happening. Keandra stood up, commanding the room with the authority Harrison had spent years denying she possessed. Gentlemen, I've called this meeting to address a serious problem with Blake Tech's intellectual property practices, specifically the systematic theft of technology from smaller companies and independent researchers. She nodded to the strangers who had entered with her, and they began distributing documents to each board member. These are FBI agents specializing in corporate fraud. They've been investigating Blake Tech based on evidence I provided regarding patent theft, corporate espionage, and fraudulent business practices. Harrison was still staring at the stock certificates, his mind struggling to process what was happening. You can't do this. These allegations are ridiculous. The evidence suggests otherwise, said Agent Martinez, stepping forward. Mr. Blake, you're under arrest for corporate fraud, patent theft, and conspiracy to commit intellectual property crimes. As the handcuffs clicked around Harrison's wrists, Keandra felt a sense of completion she hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice for all the brilliant minds Harrison had crushed in his pursuit of wealth and status. The iPhone 17 was a nice touch, she told him as the agents prepared to lead him away. It helped me understand exactly who you really are. With Harrison gone, Keandra addressed the stunned board members. Effective immediately, I'm dissolving Blake Tech Industries. All stolen intellectual property will be returned to its rightful owners, along with appropriate compensation. The company's assets will be converted into a foundation supporting minority entrepreneurs and inventors. One of the board members, clearly struggling to understand the magnitude of what had just happened, asked, Mrs. Blake, what about you? What will you do now? Keandra gathered her papers, her movements precise and purposeful. I'm going back to what I should have been doing all along, building the future instead of living in someone else's shadow. As news of Harrison's arrest spread through Silicon Valley, another story emerged that shocked the tech world even more. Dr. K. Williams, the anonymous AI researcher whose work had been revolutionizing machine learning, revealed her true identity. Keandra Blake stepped into the spotlight not as a scandal-ridden billionaire's wife, but as one of the most innovative minds in artificial intelligence. The same magazines that would have covered her divorce as a society scandal instead featured her on their covers as a tech visionary. MIT Technology Review declared her AI's most influential innovator, surrounded by the diverse team of researchers and entrepreneurs she was supporting through her new foundation. Jerome Washington, whose company Neurologic had been resurrected with Keandra's backing, stood beside her at the foundation's launch event. She didn't just give us our technology back, he told reporters. She gave us our future. Meanwhile, Cassandra found herself in an uncomfortable position. The iPhone 17 that had seemed like such a symbol of Harrison's power now felt like evidence of his crimes. When she tried to return it to Keandra, apologizing for her role in the affair, Keandra's response was unexpectedly kind. Keep it, she said. You'll need something to sell to pay your rent. The iPhone 17 Pro holds its value well, and you're going to need to start taking care of yourself. As Harrison sat in a federal holding cell, awaiting trial for crimes that could send him to prison for decades, he finally understood the magnitude of his miscalculation. He had been so focused on acquiring the latest status symbols, the newest phones, the youngest mistress, the flashiest lifestyle, that he had completely failed to recognize the brilliant woman who had been beside him all along. The iPhone 17 incident, which had seemed like such a trivial display of wealth and power, had revealed everything about who Harrison really was. He valued possessions over people, novelty over substance, and image over integrity. He had treated his wife like an outdated piece of technology, something to be replaced when a newer model came along. But Keandra had proven that real power didn't come from having the latest gadgets or the youngest girlfriend. Real power came from intelligence, from integrity, and from using your abilities to lift others up instead of tearing them down. She had been building the future while Harrison was busy stealing from it. In the end, Harrison's empire had crumbled in less than a week, brought down by the woman he had dismissed as irrelevant. The man who thought he could buy respect with a $1,000 phone learned that true respect had to be earned through character and competence, qualities he had never bothered to develop. Keandra's story became a powerful reminder that assumptions about people based on race, gender, or social roles could blind you to their true capabilities. The person you dismiss as just the wife might be the most brilliant innovator in the room. The woman you take for granted might be the architect of your downfall. As she stood in her new laboratory, surrounded by cutting-edge technology that made the iPhone 17 look like a toy, Keandra reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Harrison's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. For the first time in years, she was free to be who she really was. Not someone's wife or accessory, but Dr. Keandra Williams, brilliant scientist and champion of innovation. The iPhone 17 incident had lasted just a few days, but its consequences would reshape the tech industry for years to come. Harrison Blake, once celebrated as a visionary leader, would be remembered as a cautionary tale about the dangers of arrogance and theft. And Keandra Williams would be celebrated as proof that brilliance, integrity, and determination could overcome any obstacle, even a husband who tried to steal your light. True power, as Keandra had learned, wasn't about having the newest technology. It was about creating the technology that would shape tomorrow. And in that arena, she had always been generations ahead.